So, Claire, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us today. Share with everyone who's listening what you do for a living and who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I am really excited to talk with you today. And it's so weird to be invited on a podcast because I never considered myself an expert. It was kind of something I was just passionate about. So I really appreciate you kind of taking the time to hear what I have to say. I started out as a family photographer, and it kind of segued into privacy and online photo safety when I just started noticing people were sharing things that made me go, hmm,
Hmm.
you probably shouldn't share that. And personally, as a millennial, I don't know if it was just my experience or if this is a general experience. We were always taught what not to share online. So there were just things that was just natural that I knew not to share. And so as a photographer, photo and safety were two things I was passionate about. And so as a family photographer, it was something I took into mind and something that I saw as valuable. And so I kind of paired the two, and now I teach online photo safety.
And you know what? I appreciate that because you saw an intersection in your passions between wanting to be safe and also your passion for photography, and the two met. And you have a phenomenal Instagram account that teaches parents how to be safe online. It's taught me how to be safe online. I like your download that you offer to people. We'll talk about that later. So you're doing a good thing here, and I appreciate you. And I know that there are hundreds and hopefully soon thousands of other parents who are going to appreciate you as well.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Sure. So, why do we, as the average parent, need to care about the pictures that we post of our kids online? Like everybody posts pictures of their kids. Why do we, as parents, need to even think about what we put online?
Yeah, so I think it's become so normalized to share photos, especially with modern society. People move away from their family and communities a lot more. And so they want to stay connected, and it's just become a normal thing. But as anyone listening, and the internet is not a safe place. And so the way I kind of compare it is you wouldn't go to a park as a parent and start handing out photos of your kid. And so that's kind of how you should see the internet when you have a public account and you're tagging locations. And so just you kind of have to think of the internet as its own world. And so things that you wouldn't do in the real world, you shouldn't do in the online world. And so that's why I think it's important as a parent to be aware, and awareness, I think, produces vigilance, and it can prevent things from happening. And so,
Very good. I like your example of you wouldn't just hand out pictures of your kid at the park. That's definitely something to think about, and it's a good visual of something that, yeah, I definitely I definitely wouldn't do that. I appreciated a post that you put on Instagram recently where it said, "We as parents, we don't owe our followers any pictures of our kids." And that really resonated with me because I don't share photos of my son on the Secure Dad. So why is that kind of mindset? Why is that so important?
yeah, I think today, especially like I mentioned, this virtual connectivity that we have with people, um, family and our followers can kind of expect from us because they follow us, they support us, they're invested in what we're building, who we are, and a lot of times they feel closer to us than they really are. And I think they kind of expect to know and see your personal life. And I've seen a lot of influencers, mostly female, that are an influencer or like a mom blogger before they have kids, and they don't share, and they get a lot of negative response from their audience because their audience feels like they're owed that. They want to see the kid. And I think a lot of times people like you who have an audience can kind of feel that weird dynamic of, well, they've supported me, I should give them, but you don't owe
Right,
them that at
right.
all.
You don't. And, you know, while there's a lot of people who do follow the Secure Dad, I don't know all of them. I really don't. I don't know who was really a good person on Instagram and who's a bad person on Instagram. And I asked my son one time because I think he came to me. I was sitting here at the computer doing something, and I said, "Do you know why I don't share pictures of you on Instagram for the secure dad?" And he's like, "Because you're afraid somebody will recognize me and then kidnap me." And I was like, "Whoa, dude. Well, yes, one. Yeah, okay, that has been a thought. But also, like, I wanted my son to be anonymous online. I didn't want him to be like, oh, your dad does that podcast and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want him to be, I wanted him to have an identity outside of that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that a lot of times when people hear me talk about online photo safety, they instantly go to kind of what your son said, kidnapping and all,
Hmm.
and that
Hmm.
stuff's important. But I think a lot of times us adults lose sight of the fact that we had control over creating our online presence because
Hmm.
it wasn't a thing and now it's a thing.
Yes.
But like your son and a lot of kids now, it's always been a thing, the internet. So they didn't have that choice.
Right. And I tell people a lot on this show when I've had people on from like all these companies that try to help parents manage their kids' online presence. And it's like I can say, I was alive before the internet. So we just kind of walked into this and it's a completely different ball game for our kids. And I think that's what you're speaking to there. And speaking of the internet and social media, what a lot of us don't realize, and I don't think I fully realize, and I'm glad you're here to talk to us about this, is that when we post a photo to Instagram or to Facebook or to Twitter, we kind of lose control of that photo, don't we?
Mm-hmm. And this is something I became aware of because I was a photographer and it was something that was being talked about in the photo world because photographers use social media to share their portfolio. And so, if you don't know, if you're listening, when you agree to the terms of use for a platform like Instagram or Facebook and many others, there is a clause in there where you're agreeing for them to be allowed to use your photos for whatever they want. And they don't really have to ask you, they don't have to let you know. Like when you go to the App Store and you see a screenshot of the Instagram app, you see pictures on there of actual Instagram feed. And so one of those could be yours and they don't even have to ask you. Um, and so, yeah, it's just something that I became aware of when I was sharing my photos online because my copyrighted images, I didn't want to give someone the ability to use them. And so when I realized I don't think parents know this about pictures of their kids. And so I think it's just important to be aware of when you sign up for a platform, the terms of use is pages long and people don't even read it. They just click agree.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things in there that you don't know you're agreeing to, especially when it comes to how your photos are used.
Right. I think there was actually a documentary a few years ago called Terms and Conditions, and it was pretty much the basis of people in America don't read the terms and conditions, and you don't really know what you're opening yourself up to. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to say that I'm perfect and I always read every single line of what's going on. But yeah, it's important for us to realize, like you just said, that they can use our photos and they don't have to ask our permission for it. I don't know about you, but like I've never seen any of my pictures pop up. And you were talking about in the photography world, as a professional photographer, how does that make you feel when like a company can just use your work and not attribute the work to you or, pay you your royalties for it?
I mean, very, it feels like a betrayal almost. And even though I agreed to the terms, it still feels like I should have some kind of say
Hmm.
or have some kind of way to veto it. And so I think a lot of times when especially if it's something that you just kind of find out, it can be very jarring because it's whoa, my photo is here and they didn't even tell me they were using it. And
Hmm.
I think especially if it's a photo of yourself or your kid, that can feel even more um like a betrayal almost
Right.
or where
And it's kind of like, you feel like a part of you is stolen, whether it's a
mm-hmm.
picture that you took or it's your face or your kid's face, you feel like that's been taken from you and you have no say in it. So yeah, like I get you there. Um, so speaking of posting on social media, we do want to post for our friends and family. And like you said, people are spreading out across the country more. So sharing on social media is much more acceptable to keep friends and family in the loop. And that was a really good point. But when we post something online, it can have some pretty bad unintended consequences too. Can you share with us, what can go wrong? What can be these unintended consequences?
Yeah, when you're sharing photos online, it's usually not just a photo, it can contain more information than you realize, especially if you add a caption. And so once you post that photo, it provides some details for someone who may have some ill intentions. A photo could give away a location, it could give away a school, it could give away something your child likes, a detail about your child that could lead to grooming. It could give away their identity, which could lead to identity fraud. There's just so many things that you don't even realize you're giving away with a photo. And a lot of kickback I get is, well, all of this is public information, anyone can find it. Okay, maybe they could if they really wanted to find your address, but do you want to make it easier for them to access your kid? No,
Right.
you don't.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of times, parents take the whole first day of school picture. And I did an article on this, and I think I did a podcast where they hold up the little sign, and it's like, here's my name, my birthday, my teacher, my school, my favorite things, and it just hands a predator a blueprint to like say, hey, I know your parents because I know you go to this elementary school. This is you're in such and such's class, and I bet you like dance, don't you? And oh yeah, my daughter takes dance too. She's just two houses down. Why don't you go talk to her real quick? And then the next thing you know, somebody has been able to create a pretty, you know, detailed account of what your kid is and who they are, and be able to talk to them and make them kind of push aside those feelings of maybe this is a stranger, but he knows so much about me. So yeah, like there's a whole lot of stuff that we haven't really thought about. I'll ask you this, and I don't know if you have the technical details on this, but like explain to us what metadata is and how that can be used when in pictures that are post online.
Yeah, so actually, I want to say around 5 years ago, I started to learn more about metadata, especially when it came to taking pictures with your phone. When you take a picture with your phone, I don't know much about Android, but I know about iPhones.
Hmm.
You could go into your Photos app and you can even look up locations and it'll show you all the photos that you took in that location. And that's because of the metadata that's on the photo. And about 5 years ago, before 5 years ago, when you uploaded a photo from your phone to Facebook, it kept the data on that picture. And now they've worked on encryption and it's a little bit better. But I mean, if someone really wanted to figure it out, I think they could, especially with your phone if you have location services on. I've actually tested it out with a friend, taken a picture and texted it to them. And I transferred the photo from my phone to my computer and I pulled up and I could see where they were.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people don't know that about photos, especially if you're texting a photo to a family member who's now going to text it to their neighbor. Oh, look at my
Right.
granddaughter, look at
Right.
my grandson. So metadata is something a lot of people don't know about or even realize their phone is creating a very detailed package that they're sending out to people.
Right. And it's all stuff that we agreed to in the terms and conditions, but we're just not aware of. But thankfully, I know for iPhone, you can turn that off. I'm pretty sure for
Mm-hmm.
Android, you can too. And I think aren't there apps out there that'll scrub your metadata for you before you share something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there are.
yeah. So I guess go into your app store, whichever phone you have, and look that up and make sure you have something like that before you put it online. A little while ago, I was asking you about the unintended consequences that can happen when we post a picture of our kid online. And it may be just an innocuous picture, but what are some pictures that we really should never post online about our kids?
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot on my Instagrams where I'm mostly active. There's very few things I'll say you should not do this, but there are a couple things that you should never do. And it's any kind of photo where the child is not clothed, half clothed, unclothed in any way, in a vulnerable position, and embarrassing detail. The clothing, the no clothing aspect is for online predators. The embarrassing details about a child could be for bullies later in life.
Hmm.
That's a major problem with parents that overshare online about things their kids are going through. And unfortunately, when it comes to sharing photos where kids are not fully clothed, there's just a lot that can happen with editing that predators can do and steal the photos. And it's horrible. There was a study that was done in Australia in 2015, um, where they found a website that was exploiting children, and over half the images were stolen from social media, and some of them edited, some of them not. A lot of times it doesn't even have to be a photo where the child is unclothed. It could just be a casual photo and something that a regular everyday person would think is cute and innocent and very, very just childlike and,
Sure.
oh, very cute. It can be twisted in horrible ways. And it's it's hard to kind of put that mindset on when you're thinking about a picture because you don't think that way naturally. But if you just ask yourself, what could happen with this photo if I post it, and why am I posting it? It kind of helps just set a baseline for if it should be posted.
Sure. You know, and you used a really good word a while ago, and that was oversharing. And in the security world, if you overshare, you can give away that information like we've been talking about, and I appreciate it. And we've kind of talked about the things that we shouldn't do and the unintended consequences. But as a parent, if you feel compelled to share something about your kid online, what are some best practices that we should follow to make sure that we are protecting their digital identity and that we're not oversharing?
Yeah, I think things to remember is you don't have to share their name. You don't have to share their full name, especially some people think they just share their first name, but your last name is usually on your profile. So they kind of have the full name there.
Right.
Um, uh, Thinking about when you're, if you want to post a photo, there are photos that are better to post. Group photos, photos that are far away are harder to edit. Group photos are harder to edit. Further away, it's hard to see the child's face. And especially if you're a creative person, I think it can be fun to kind of just a little artistic project to think of ways you can take pictures of your kid that don't give away their identity. And so there are ways to share online. I think a lot of in the mommy blogger influencer world, they become a mom and it kind of is their identity, and that's totally fine. But I think a lot of people lose sight of the line between sharing about their experience as a parent and sharing their child's experience. And so learning how you can share as a parent without giving away too much about your child's experience is really important because they should be able to have control over their experience, and you can have control over yours as a parent.
Right. And that's what I think a lot of parents don't realize is they are creating their kids' digital identity. While they think they're doing it for themselves, it's that unintended consequence thing again. I was looking at Twitter this morning and I saw this tweet and I wish I had taken a picture of it, but I didn't. It was this one mom and she was just venting on social media and she said, my kids are being jerks today. And then the next line was, "Oh, if you're reading this in the future, mommy loves you, sweetie." And so I was just like, well, at least she kind of knows what's going on here a little bit. But yeah, I kind of felt like, you calling out your kid. She didn't actually say jerk. She actually used a word I'm not going to use on my podcast. And I was like, wow, that's going to stay on Twitter forever, and that's not going to go anywhere. One thing that I saw you post on Instagram that I absolutely 100% agreed with you on, and we've kind of been talking about this all along, is when there is a birth announcement. What do you see in the typical birth announcement for a kid, and what should we not do?
Yeah, I actually came across this During the pandemic is when I really started connecting the dots here with birth announcements, just because I had more free time. And I saw one that a picture of the child was posted with their full name, middle, last, all the things, the time, their weight, and all of that, and then the hospital was tagged.
Hmm.
And I thought that's interesting. So I went to the hospital geolocation, and it was all birth announcements, pretty much. This is like a gold mine for someone who's trying to
Right.
get fake credit cards and create fake
Yeah.
identities. And
Hmm.
it was wild. And I just don't think people think about it.
Right. They've posted pretty much everything but their social security number, and only because it hasn't been
Yeah.
assigned to them on day one.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so that drives me crazy too. And there's the course, there's the predatory aspect of it, but also you brought up the scammers, people who can use real names. And I have found out in my research, and I'm glad you're doing research too, is that credit card companies, they just get a name and a valid social. They don't check the age of the person who filled out the form to the person that they
Oh,
look
wow.
up online. So you can be like a 55-year-old guy using the name and social security number of a 3-year-old girl, and they won't know. So yeah, protecting that information is vital. And we as parents, and I've done this in the past. I posted a lot of pictures of my kid. I haven't actually posted a picture of my son online in over a year because I've been convicted about this. And like I what are some alternatives to being able to share, not necessarily on social media? Is there something else that we can do that can share pictures with specific people but not share it with everybody?
Yeah, there's a couple different apps. Um, I don't have children, so there's not any that I've specifically used, but I've had a lot of moms tell me that it's called Tiny Beans
Okay.
is an app that they share, and I get a lot of messages from moms asking if this app is good or this app is good. And I'm never going to say 100% you should use this app because there's always loopholes. But I
Right.
think one thing to consider when looking for an app that is a sharing that isn't a social app, is just, are they open about their security? Are Do they tell when they have security breaches? Do they have a privacy clause and page where you can read about that? Are they open about that sort of thing? One thing I saw a lot of people using in 2020 were digital picture frames.
Mhm.
And not all of them are the most secure. There are two that I researched that were pretty open about their security and what they do with people's information. And that to me is huge because obviously, having smart devices in your home, there's just so many ways for hackers to get on them. But I think if the company is very open about what they do to try and reduce that, then that's a good product.
Right. That is something, honestly, Claire, I have not thought about is a digital picture frame and the potential the potential harm that comes with that. That's Thank you for that because that is not something that I had thought of. I with the whole we have, I guess, the Amazon, what is it's not the Amazon show. It's like the one with the screen, and then of course there's all the
Oh,
little ones that you can connect, like your Gmail photos with, or your Amazon photos with it, and it's all there. Honestly, I'd never thought about that sort of stuff being breached, so I greatly appreciate that.
yeah. I personally, I don't know that I would use one that connects to Amazon or Google Photos. There are frames that are kind of its own ecosystem where it has its own app and it pairs with the frame and you can invite people, and that's how they view it. They have to be on that app. And so
Very
that
cool.
to
I
me
like
is a
that.
little bit more secure.
Sure. Absolutely. So, Claire, I appreciate you being with us today and teaching me live here on the fly. So, we've talked about a lot of stuff. What's one takeaway message that you want every parent listening to this to understand?
I think if I were talking to someone in person, I would just tell them that you don't know what you don't know. A lot of times people start to feel guilt and shame, and then they get defensive where they feel panic, like they have to go and instantly delete everything. And so just like take a breath and remember you're okay. You're going to take what you've learned and you're going to move forward with it. You're not a horrible parent. We don't know what we don't know. And so something that's so normalized that most people in this world aren't thinking about, you can't beat yourself up for not thinking about it. But once you learn, I think adults, I'm not a parent, so I can't say as parents, but as adults collectively, we need to help and empower kids to have their own digital identity and be the ones that make the choice. So once we learn, we have to do something with that.
Well said, Claire. I know people are going to want to know more about you and your mission. So where can people find you online?
On Instagram, it's just my name, Claire Rodahaver. And then if you can't find that, just go to onlinephotosafety.com and it links right to my website. And it also links to a free starter guide that I have to get started with online photo safety, things to post, what not to post, hashtags to avoid, and all kinds of tips like that.
Yeah, and your startup guide is fantastic. I have used it. I've downloaded it. I looked at it just before we got on here, and it is fantastic. Please go visit Claire's site and download that so you can help protect your family online. Claire, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Andy. It was awesome.